We want to hang out with our friend Monty Poole, who with NBC Sports Bay Area is joining us right now on the River Islands guest line. Monty, what a perfect day to talk Dubs basketball, huh?
Well, I'm not sure they would agree with that, but yeah, not so bad.
I mean, my gosh. Like, okay, so one night just brushed your shoulder off, forget it, move on, or do we have legitimately some signs of major concern here? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, there are some signs of concern because, this is looking at a game that they practically did not show up. There was all this talk about setting an early defensive tone, which they didn't do against Dallas on Sunday. And Steve Kerr was like, yeah, we are a defensive team. That's what we have to hang our hats on. And they had a couple of days of practice. They had one game over a 7-day period. And so they had a little bit of time to sort of pull some things together. And then to see that performance last night, yeah, it has to put you on alert. I'm curious to see how they respond tomorrow in Minnesota. If they lose again, if they lose big again, yeah, then sound the sirens, sound the alarms, because you got real problems. If they play well and lose, then I think you can ease up a little bit and see where it's going, because it's going to take some time for Dennis Schröder to be able to assimilate himself with his group. He's playing with a totally different team in Brooklyn. Basically, the last 4 or 5 days for him have been a whirlwind. Yeah, he had about maybe 2 hours worth of practice time with these guys, and he was in the starting lineup last night, and he didn't play well, but who did besides Wiggins? So yeah, I think you don't want to overreact, but at the same time, you got to be on alert to see what happens tomorrow night, because if they get blown out again tomorrow night, wow, that's a real problem.
Yeah, and it's been kind of a real skid, and Mark and I have been going back and forth about the idea of, has Steph earned enough over the course of his year to warrant them to make a move ahead of the deadline if the team is not doing much better? I'm more interested, Monty, in about what you're seeing in how teams are defending Steph, because it seems to me more and more that teams are willing to, top lock him and guard him for 94 feet and really take him out of the game. Are the Warriors not adjusting to this new defensive approach on Steph?
Well, yeah, I think that's part of the issue. That's happened before. But what's happening is that the teams are taking the mentality, which I'm not surprised that anybody but Steph, and it's not that they're saying everybody else can score, but they're saying there's one guy on this team we don't want to see get loose. And you're seeing that a lot now. And Steph is, he's one of those guys that we know he's had some knee issues, both knees. And so you've got some issues there that he doesn't really want to get into. Steph is one of those people who just doesn't even acknowledge his injuries. And so I have no doubt that he's playing through something just because of what I'm looking at. The eye test is telling me that this isn't the Steph that is fully healthy. And he's not on the injury report. He wasn't yesterday. He started, played 24 minutes, I believe is what it was. So when you're not quite 100% and you're getting 94 feet of pressure, double teams, getting blitzed, it can take something out of you. And so you do need somebody to step up. And so yesterday, I thought Wiggins was the only guy giving him any offense early on, but their problem was that 2 problems. One, turnovers. You had 8 turnovers in the first quarter. You gave away 12 points to the Grizzlies in the first 12 minutes. And the problem with turnovers, live ball turnovers, is that there's no way to defend it. Your defense doesn't have a chance to set up. Might be able to scramble back and maybe get something, but the Grizzlies shot 9 of 10 on fast break points. Guess what most of those were? Live ball turnovers. Yep. And you can't defend them. So if you shoot 90% in any part of your game, you're probably going to win. And so the offensive, the poor play on offense was accentuated by the fact that the offense was committing so many turnovers that led to points the other way. So you're looking at a team yesterday that didn't bring offense because it was bad, and the defense, again, the defense didn't look good, but it's worse, made worse by the fact that there were so many turnovers that allowed Grizzlies to go the other way and get easy buckets.
Monty Poole, NBC Sports Bay Area, is with us. Monty, when you see the Warriors play like they are now, I wonder what you think the organization thinks. In other words, the worse they play, does that make them think, hey, we have got to make a trade? Or does that make them think, boy, we shouldn't make a trade because it's not worth it to go for something that's not going well.
Well, I think that's a process they're in right now. Make no mistake, though, Joe Lacob, the CEO, is very much – he's as ambitious as they come. You know, he's not a guy who accepts losing unless you tell him, here's why we're losing, because Steph's out, Draymond's out, Wiggins is out, then okay. But when he looks out there and he sees the only guy on the injury report is Moses Moody, and you're losing like that, yeah, he is not going to be a happy guy. And so Mike Dunleavy has made it clear that, the Schröder trade was a good trade, a sharp trade, a smart trade. It made sense given that they lost Melton, and he sort of replaces that. But they're not done. And the question is, what can they get and what are they willing to give up? And I've been of the opinion that, it's hard to get a real, an impact player, a real difference maker without giving up Kuminga. And I know that's not something that Joe wants to do, but I do also know that the organization is, there's some people who think JK can be an all-star and others are skeptical still. And after 4 years, I get that side because you watch them play and sometimes he looks good and sometimes he doesn't. And I think if you're Steve Kerr or Mike Dunleavy, that's what you have to figure out. He had this little audition here for a couple of weeks where he was starting in the lineup. He was in the starting lineup, and let's see what he does for us. And again, it didn't go well because they've been losing more than winning lately. So you go back to Draymond, put JK on the bench yesterday, and looking for some defense. And Draymond was not good at all yesterday. He was not good at all. So, yeah, I think he had 4 fouls in 19 minutes, 4 turnovers. And so he wasn't good. Steph was not good, but I think you can look at the game and see why Steph wasn't good. So yeah, it's a tough skid right now, but I know that they're going to be active in talking to other teams, trying to make something happen. But I also know that I don't sense at least that Mike or Joe feels like we got to do something right away. I mean, they still have about 5-6 weeks before the trade deadline. And I think that they're thinking, okay, Dennis just got here. Let's see how this looks for a few games. And before we start looking at other options in terms of doing something pretty quickly. But right now, I don't sense that they want to do something tomorrow or the next day or the next day. I think they want to play it out for a few days and see how it goes because we all knew that this month was going to be a tough month. We all saw the schedule. You saw who they were playing. And after the cupcakes they had for the most part in the first 3 or 4 weeks, this is like, okay, buddy, gravel road now. What you got? And it's uphill. And you're seeing it. That's your tale is being told by that right now is that the Warriors are not a great team. They can be good, but right now they're mediocre.
Yeah, and gravel road is a great way to put it. And you've got Minnesota still ahead and the Clippers, and you got Cleveland coming up before the start of the year. And I wonder, Monte, just hearing you talk about like the timeline, is there a chance that maybe they don't make any big moves until the offseason because you still have, 2.5 more years of Steph, and you still have Draymond, and the urgency we all want to feel this year, but is there a chance that they might wait until the offseason where Kuminga gets signed and then they give him the Jordan Poole treatment where you could actually get more back from him from a salary standpoint?
No, I mean, that's on the table too. This next, I'm going to say 2 or 3 weeks are pretty critical about, how they will pivot and say, early to mid-January. What are you going to do then? Because that's when, if this team doesn't show signs of coming to life, that's when the buzz will start to, the volume on the buzz will start to go up. And whether they make a move in 2 weeks or 4 weeks or just ahead of the deadline or, maybe in the offseason, I do sense that they will definitely try to make a move before the deadline. But I think that more than likely that move is still, not imminent. I'd be surprised if they did something in the next week or so. I think it's going to be a little more time. They want to see how it goes with what they have right now because they have to know they're not as good as they were when they started because they played a lot of teams that weren't very good. And they're not as bad as they are right now. They just look bad. And they looked really bad the last couple of nights. So I don't sense that they are pushing the panic button just yet. And I don't see that from Mike. I don't see it from Joe. They're trying to do some problem solving. And the question is, will those problems how long will it take to solve those problems if they ever get solved at all?
Monty, how real is the Jimmy Butler talk?
Everything that I've heard, rumors, whispers, and the whole nine indicates that, yeah, Jimmy Butler is nice in theory. The concept of having Jimmy Butler on your team is good because he's well known as one of those players who really gets up for the postseason. But everything that I've heard is that the Warriors are kind of skittish about his availability. This is a team that, the last couple of years, when Wiggins was out, they missed him. What happens if Steph goes out? And so they want to make sure that they want to feel like he can be there for them. And availability has been the problem with him in Miami. That's why he got on the bad side of Pat Riley. Pat's like, yeah, Jimmy's great, but we don't always see him. And if you're the Warriors, and you just went through this with Melton a little bit, they knew it was a risk because he had a back issue last year. But they thought, no, let's give it a shot because if he's healthy, he can really help us, which is true. But D'Anthony Melton is a lot different from Jimmy Butler in terms of Jimmy Butler makes 4 times the money, first of all. And he's a different kind of player. Jimmy Butler is an all-star caliber player, but he just seems to be in and out of the lineup. And I don't know if the Warriors want to break up their team for a guy who they can't rely on.
Yeah, and that's fair. I mean, especially if he decides that he doesn't want to opt in next year. So now it becomes a 3-month rental. The thing that's sticking with me, Monty, is the idea of Steph Curry and whether or not he can still, quote unquote, do it. Because at times, yes, he can do it. He can still be one of the top 5 players in the association. But do you look at Steph now, coming up on 37, as a guy who can night in and night out carry a team to be a legitimate, deep playoff team?
No, he's got to have help. They know that. The Warriors are aware of that. They're looking at Steph and Draymond in the same vein that Greg Popovich looked at Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili toward the end of their careers. Let's bring their minutes down to the high 20s, low 30s, and put some guys around them. The Spurs got lucky in getting Kawhi Leonard, and so he was able to lead them to one more championship with that group. And Kawhi was huge for that team. If they didn't have him, that championship was not going to happen. But if you're the Warriors, you understand what Steph and Draymond have done for you. You're not going to short-shrift them now. You understand how important they are. So you want to keep them. You want to preserve them every chance you get. But at the same time, you're not going to give up on them. I mean, I heard somebody yesterday saying, "Oh, maybe it's time to trade. Make a big trade." There are some guys in the NBA you just don't trade, and number 30 is one of those guys. You just don't. I mean, the Lakers. Remember the talk back in the day about the Lakers maybe trading Kobe. Kobe wanted out. Wanted out. Can you think of how silly that would have been? And it was never going to happen. It was never going to happen. And to me, Steph is much in the same status, a guy that you don't trade because of what he's meant to this franchise. The Warriors are the number one, the most valued franchise in the NBA and second in all of American sports. How much of that happens without number 30?
Yeah, none of it. None of it. Yeah.
So they understand that part of it too. He is his own economy. As long as they have him on their team, which I believe will be as long as he's playing in the NBA, he's going to be there. He's not going anywhere. And Draymond, to a lesser degree, yeah, maybe Draymond at some point. But the question with Draymond has always been, what's his value to other teams? We know what he means to the Warriors, but what do you mean as much to another team? And I think that's a fair question to ask.
Monty Poole, NBC Sports Bay Area. Monty, this might be a rabbit hole, but I hear people talking about it, so I'd love to get your insight. Can we go back to the offseason? Based on your knowledge, the chasing of Lauri Markkanen, how real was it? And if it broke down, did it break down because Danny wanted too many draft picks, or was Brandon Podziemski actually the linchpin that he was rumored to be?
It broke down because Danny wanted too much. and I think the Warriors knew that. Anybody who's dealt with Danny before knows he's going to try and fleece you. And the Warriors looking at Lauri Markkanen and saying he's a nice number 2 or number 3 guy. He's long. We could use his length. But we don't want to break up our future nucleus for that. And now I don't know how good Podziemski is going to be in 3 years, but they think highly of him. I need to see more. And so you're looking at Podziemski and Kuminga. Those are 2 guys that the Warriors look at and say, these guys can be with us for the long term. And I think when Brandon's really good, when he's at his best, yeah, I love him. When he's at his best, he reminds me a little bit of Ginobili when he was playing for the Spurs. A guy who's not super big, but always gets in the way, makes good things happen. But Kuminga is different. I mean, Kuminga's a different athlete, and wondering what to do with him is sort of where they are right now. And but the trade, the market and trade was discussed, and the Warriors were very interested. But when you deal with Danny Ainge, you got to know that what he wants, and he's probably going to want too much. And sometimes it's better to walk away when you talk to that guy.
Is there a certain reluctance around the league accordingly to maybe give the Warriors, not a sweetheart deal, but to just deal with the Warriors in general because of all the success that they've had?
I sense that, yes. And not that they won't deal with them at all, but yeah, they don't want to do the Warriors any quote unquote favors. It has to be a tit for tat. Okay, if you want our guy, give us your guy. And that's the issue. And part of that is because, the success they've had and where this franchise has gone. If you've been around the Bay Area long enough, there was a time when the Warriors were a backwater in the NBA. They were like, nobody wanted to come here, and they were always losing. Ownership was bad, and they couldn't retain stars. Gilbert Arenas got going here, and he said, I'm out of here. Chris Cohan wouldn't even shake my hand, So where they've come to, where they are now, and you say to yourself, well, you give them a chance. This franchise has really blossomed from the bottom 5 of the league to the top 2 in the league. And so I just think that they got to have one eye on the future because Steph is not going to play forever. And, they're on Christmas Day again this year, 12th in a row. And ask yourself, will this Christmas Day game streak continue if number 30 is not there? I got to say no. And if you're looking at that, that means that they're not in the championship picture. They're not right now, and they won't be unless they make another big move.
Monty, it's wonderful to have you at a time where the frustrations and the questions and everything are at a real high after last night. So thanks for doing it, man.
You got it, guys. Take care.
Okay,
thanks,
too.
Monty.
Yep, happy holidays, Monty Poole, NBC Sports Bay Area.